Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel and welcome to our cozy little corner of the internet. I'm Pen and today I'll be reading chapter 11 of It's Not Love If You Run When It's Hard by Lita Cakes. Now, you will find that I am missing a large chunk of this video. I will put that in a separate video because it's very close to a sex scene and I do not want people to get disturbed by that. And along with my muttering and I'm doing it for your safety. Not safety, but you know what I mean. Also, another trigger warning for this video. There is Izuku mentioning suicide. And what's her name? Asami? The girl at the side of the fic. The 6-year-old. Yeah, there's mention of her suicide too. But, just so you know, take care of yourself. And I'll see you guys soon. Chapter 11. Izuku paced the sidewalk outside the hospital, waiting for Shoda to pick him up. The longer he stood there, the more his legs itched to run. He wanted to clear his mind and forget everything that was happening this morning. Osamu was resting peacefully, and Izuku had spent some time going over everything with the medical team before he headed down to meet his ride. For now, his mentor was safe. Where was I? They believed he had a small IQ quirk, which meant they hadn't kicked him out for being over his quirklessness. There was a small chance they wouldn't because of how serious his injuries were and the fact that they were caused by a hero, but Izuku wasn't taking that risk. Now, he had to stand around and wait and wallow in anger and grief. He would need to fill Nami in at some point, but he had already let Nezu know what Osamu requested, so step 1 was done. He'd give Nami a call when he got back to the dorms, and maybe she would be able to make a forum post to alert the community of his absence and Nezu's temporary help. Izuku brushed a hand through his curls and to try and soothe his mind, but nothing was working. He was angry, frustrated, and exhausted. Osamu, who was the closest thing to a loving father Izuku ever had, was laying in a hospital bed covered in burns because of endeavor. A hero had burned 6 people just to get a villain who was running away from him. Running. The villain was running away. He wasn't fighting. He didn't even try to harm any bystanders or property. But Endeavor unleashed a torrent of flames in an enclosed space, leaving the store they were all in to catch fire and collapse. Izuku wanted to ruin him, but he made a promise to Osamu that he wouldn't walk down that path. He knew that if he let out this box up anger and generational hate out of the closet he locked it away in, there would be no going back. Don't throw that away from me, or for anyone. He had everything he wanted to right at his fingertips, but he couldn't think of anything but destroying Endeavor and burning down the Hero Commission with his bare hands for all the horrible things they'd done to him, done to not only the Quirkless, but everyone weaker than them. This world is cruel to anyone who lacked a powerful quirk and the ability to lay still and obey their beaters. Shoda's black SUV rolled up before he could think any longer about his desire to destroy the hero world. Hey, problem child. Shoda called out through the open window. Hey, Shoda. Izuku pulled the door open and practically collapsed into the car seat. This is a dumb question to ask, but are you okay? Izuku wasn't altogether sure what to say. Logically, he was fine. He was stable. He wasn't going to hurt himself or physically hurt someone else. But he was still somehow standing on the precipice of absolute success or absolute destruction. Izuku didn't have an answer that he wanted to give, nor one that Shoda wanted to hear. So he spoke about the only thing he could, his mentor. Osamu is resting. He'll be sent home in a few days. I need to call Nami. Izuku, that wasn't smooth. You know what I'm asking. Yes, I know what you're asking, Shoda. Izuku snapped. Fuck, sorry. He put his head between his legs and combed through his hair. He felt a hand on his shoulder, but he didn't fight it. Comfort was something he could use right now, so he leaned into Shredder's hand and tried to focus on just breathing. It's been a rough night, kid. A rough few weeks. I don't think this is how any of us want to wake up today. I just want 1 week where everything goes alright, Izuku groaned. I think you're asking a lot from the universe, kiddo. Can we go? I really need a nap. Yeah. Shredder started the car again and pulled away from the hospital. You're excused from classes for today. You're going to rest. For once, Izuku had no reason to argue. He really wanted to sleep off this horrible migraine forming behind his eyes. He wanted to curl up with Hitoshi and sleep for a solid 6 hours, and maybe drink a whole pot of coffee afterwards. That sounded phenomenal right about now. Can I still go on the field trip this week? Shredder only looked slightly shocked. Sure, of course. I didn't think you'd be up for it. Sorry. I don't know, but if I don't get all this out somehow, I'm going to lose my mind. But I need to crash first. Then maybe jug a whole gallon of coffee. A whole gallon of caffeine, sorry. Always forget to turn that off. Fuck. Okay. Izuku sighed, leaning it back into the car seat. He was hit with a sudden wave of exhaustion that quite literally forced him back into the seat. He wanted to sleep. He really wanted to sleep. But he knew that Shredder wasn't going to let the whole Asami was just attacked thing where it was without checking that Izuku wasn't going to unleash madness on the world. As if on cue, Shredder finally spoke up when they were halfway back to UA. Should I be worried about you? Probably. Right. That doesn't help me assess how far on the scale you are, a scale from 1 to world domination we are. I think we're at a solid 6 point. My head's about to crack open. Okay, take a breather, get some rest. I'll wake you when we're back, but this conversation isn't over. Got it. Thanks, Shredder, for everything. The Tide Hero gave him a pat on the hand, and Izuku settled down into the seat a little further so he could shut his eyes and just take a few minutes to stop existing in a healthy way. When Izuku woke up, he was in his own bed, which was certainly not where he fell asleep. The sun was high in the sky, making his room an awful yellow hue. Was it noon? He must have crashed hard in Shredder's car ride home. He rolled himself upright and leaned on his knees. Throwing off his sleep schedule wasn't exactly the best thing, but he would make do. His head was practically throbbing. Izuku assumed that was at least partly due to the rolling thunderstorm in his heart. He had to make a choice, a crossroad to turn at. If he did nothing, there was a good bet that Izuku's migraine would never go away. Of course, that was an overdramatization, but it was his best assumption of the situation. Grunting, he pulled himself off of the bed to greet the damn day for a second time. This time, he wasn't rudely awakened by a screeching cell phone. Actually, his phone was back on the charger. Shredder must have done that when he carried Izuku to bed. Wait, did he carry Izuku to bed? That was an interesting thought. Shredder was a good teacher and a great guardian. Maybe Izuku could have more than one father figure. He had a few texts and messages, and oh fuck, he needed to call Nami. Damn it. The call wasn't exactly fun. Nami had panicked at first, but once he explained everything, she calmed down. Of course, there was only so much calm they could feel while Osamu was in the hospital. Eventually, Nami had to go tend to her mentee, and Izuku really needed food, so they hung up, and Izuku didn't feel any better better for having the call. Nami wasn't frail by any means, but she was a shy little thing. Izuku worried for her mentees, but he trusted Nami to take care of them. A shower helped him feel slightly better. Thankfully, they provided each of the dorm rooms with a mini fridge, which Izuku had stocked a couple of days ago with some sodas, water, and a couple of snacks. He grabbed a bottle of water and a chilled granola bar. Toshi called him weird for keeping his granola bars in the fridge, but Izuku thought that it made the goo that held them together more gooey when chilled. Sue him, he thought it tasted better this way. When he finally checked the clock, he realized it was already 2. Classes would be out soon. He could go down and wait for them. He should really go down and wait for them, but he didn't want to face them all, not right now. Not while he was still debating if heroism was actually something he could accomplish, or if he was going to walk down another path in life like All Might had told him. Fuck. His textbooks and notebooks started on the ground when he shoved everything off his desk. Why was this so difficult? Why did he have to be the first? Why did this rest on his wounded shoulders? All he wanted was to be accepted as he was. Broken as that may be, none of it was easy. His desire to be a hero, none of this was easy. His desire to be a hero, getting into a hero school, surviving the next 3 years and facing the world that may come after. Most of these were challenges yet to be faced. When Izuku finally looked away from the mess he made, he found Hitoshi at the door, watching him. The tired teen had his arms crossed, while leaning on the frame of the door, which was only cracked open slightly behind him. "Don't," Izuku groaned. "Don't give me that look." "What look?" "Don't," Izuku warned again. Hitoshi sighed. He pulled the door shut behind himself, and he walked over to Izuku. They stared off across the desk. Hitoshi was worried, but Izuku was glaring. He didn't want to hear some speech about being a fucking hero or changing the world. "You don't get to come in here and tell me to not take Endeavor down after what he did to Osamu. You do not get to come down here and convince me that if I just buckle down and graduate, I'll prove them all fucking wrong and change the fucking world," he gasped. "Are you done?" Hitoshi's voice was measured, not rude, but patient. "No." Izuku shoved his chair out of the way as he put a hand to Hitoshi's chest and forced his boyfriend back against the wall. Toshi didn't fight him. "I'm not fucking done." There was a look in Hitoshi's face, but the look in Hitoshi's face wasn't pity, disagreement, sadness, or even annoyance. It was acceptance. It was agreement. I'm not. Hitoshi grabbed Hitoshi's hand, brushed across his cheek, pushing the damp curls from his face. Something silent and intimate passed between them. Izuku wasn't sure what it was. Maybe some sort of strange understanding across their shared universe, but it quelled the anger still boiling in his bones. Izuku clenched his jaw, still trying to be resolute in whatever choice he hadn't made yet. Hitoshi wrapped his hand around the back of Izuku's head and moved him closer until their foreheads were touching, his voice barely a whisper against Izuku's cheek. "Whatever you choose, I'll be there with you." How could Izuku ask him to do that much? How could Izuku ask that much of him? How could Hitoshi ever give that much of himself to Izuku? But here it was, laid out on a platter in front of him. Acceptance. That is what Izuku wanted. That's what he needed. His family and friends had never accepted him as he was, but Hitoshi had never once found fault in Izuku's existence. He took Izuku as he was, at his word, and for all the failings and weird habits, like putting his stupid granola bars in the damn fridge. Okay, so I know you're probably going to hate me butting in the middle of this, but I just want to I'm taking this bit out because it's smut. It's absolute smut, and no, I'm not gonna have people do that, like, not children at least. So that's gonna be in a separate video, which I will upload at about the same time. But anyway, make sure that if I don't want people too young hearing that. I wasn't comfortable reading it, so yeah. Anyway, hope you guys enjoy the rest. See ya. Izuku nodded. Hitoshi carefully got them both off the ground so he could grab a fresh pair of clothes for them. Izuku realized his boxes were just wet to the touch, were just a touch wet, so he should probably change. Hitoshi pulled his pants and shirt back on and helped Izuku get dressed while checking with him before everything he did. Izuku appreciated how much Hitoshi cared for him, and even if he didn't want to seem so gentleless, even if he didn't want to need such gentleness, it made a difference. The last thing they did was clean off the blood from Izuku's chest and make sure their hair was in order because Izuku had seriously messed it up. "Where have you two idiots been?" Katsuki grumbled as they walked into the kitchen. In seconds, they both had bowls of katsudan in hand and were ushered to the counter. Izuku blushed and looked away, and Katsuki scoffed. "All the extras finish eating it before Hobo-sensei starts asking questions." They quickly stuffed their mouths with food because the real threat was their teacher/guardian coming out to ask why they were late to dinner. Why they were late to dinner was not a conversation either of them wanted to have. Izuku shot a concerned glance at Shota's apartment door, half expecting him to appear just by being mentioned. "Slow down, dumbass." Katsuki flicked his forehead. "Ow, Kachan, that's not nice." "Since when am I nice?" Hitoshi nearly choked on a piece of pork when he laughed at their antics. Izuku rolled his eyes. "Aren't you supposed to be in anger management?" he grumbled. Yeah, work the program, shut the fuck up." Katsuki ruffled his curls and flipped Hitoshi off. He started to clean the kitchen without another word. Izuku looked around the common room. A few of their classmates were looking at them with smirks and hidden laughs. Obviously their lateness was noticed. Izuku couldn't stop yet another blush crossing his cheeks. Hitoshi nudged their elbows together. "You know we gotta talk, right? For real?" Izuku sighed. "Yeah, I know. My point still stands. I'll be by your side, whatever you choose. All I want to say is that you should think about what means the most to you, changing the world by heroism or revenge." In only a few sentences, Hitoshi summed up the root of the problem Izuku was facing. The root of the damn problem was so simple, and yet Izuku had been dancing back and forth for the last 12 hours. Did he want to change the world by heroism or with revenge? "Yeah, I guess I should think about that." "Promise you won't act on anything until you decide and tell me?" Izuku reached over and squeezed Hitoshi's hand. "Promise." He really shouldn't have asked for 1 week where everything went right, because everything kept going wrong. Tuesday was the outlier as a decent day. Nothing eventful happened. They had class and they trained, and Izuku managed to knock more than one student on their ass, more than 2 actually. Hitoshi got several to dance like monkeys, and the whole class roared with laughter. Wednesday, however, it started off perfectly normal. Izuku woke up in Hitoshi's bed and after sneaking into the room past curfew the night before. This week has been rough. Sue him for needing comfort. He'd tell Shota the same if he got in trouble for it. Besides, after the weekend they had, Izuku, it seemed only fair that Izuku got to cope in whatever way he wanted. Breakfast, classes, and even lunch went by perfectly normal, and Izuku was feeling more comfortable with his classmates. He shared a couple funny stories about when he and Katsuki were little, Of course that was before the bullying started, but he didn't mention that. The blonde even cracked a smile, which shocked the whole class into laughter, much to Katsuki's growing displeasure. Alright, Hellspawn, listen up. Shoda's tone was tense, his shoulders tight like coiled springs. Arriving onto the training ground Delta had been a relaxing walk while he talked to Hagakure about her suit. May had made a couple of minor adjustments to it as per Izuku's request after the testing he did last week. And the hero student was truly enjoying her suit. But the moment they arrived, Izuku was on edge from his guardian speaking. Today is your first day of your new teacher, your new mentor, All Might. Izuku's right eye twitched. Hitoshi put a hand on his shoulder and squeezed. This was a warning. It was a warning. If he had trying to be offered support or comfort, he would have grabbed Izuku's bracelets. Instead, he was holding Izuku back. Still, the shorter teen took a few deep breaths and nodded to his boyfriend. He didn't miss the look Shoda shot them both. Wait, we get to train with number one hero? Kirishima threw his fist in the air. That's so manly. I'm sorry. Okay. What do you think he'll teach us? His smash moves? What about his flying leap across the country? Or strength training? We could all use that. I want to ask him about his speed. The class all chimed in, minus a few outliers who had heard the argument Izuku had with Shoda when he first found out All Might would be teaching here. Teaching of all things. Izuku looked out for those outliers. Ochaku was conflicted, chewing her lip in thought. Katsuki had his hands stuffed in his pockets while staring out at the training ground. His face wasn't his usual scowl, but instead something more thoughtful, or maybe worrisome. Izuku couldn't place it. Hitoshi had slipped both his arms around Izuku's shoulders so he could rest his chin atop Izuku's head. They were all in hero gear, which made this hugging harder. Izuku was just in a gym uniform for the time being. Mei was working on his suit. Izuku was trying not to worry about its explosiveness once it was finished. Hitoshi's suit was simple enough: black cargo pants and a padded calvar shirt to protect him. He had gloves, boots, and a capture scarf like Shoda. Just as the class was settling into conversation over their new mentor, a whining gust of wind struck the training ground. A few of them braced, knowing what was coming. The rest ended up stumbling or falling over. Worry not, for I am here. I twitch. If you kill him, I'll send you to prison. You'll end up in prison. Sorry. No, I'll send you to prison. You'll end up in prison. Hitoshi whispered, likely to remind Izuku that he had not chosen to murder anyone by default. But not murdering him didn't mean that he couldn't knock a couple of assholes off their platforms or pedestals. Izuku grumbled. Izuku and Hitoshi had stayed towards the back of the class, avoiding eye contact with Shoda, and avoiding All Might's line of sight. It worked well enough for the time being. Most of the class was thrilled to meet the number one. Most of them. Who's ready for some battle training? What? Shoda barked. These kids have barely made past chapter 3 in Foundational Heroics textbook, and you've only had 1 week of safety training. You can't seriously expect them to hop into mock battle Hitoshi. Not Toshinori. Wow, thanks English. Shoda. Aizawa. These kids have been practicing their quirks for 10 years. They know how to handle themselves. Izuku didn't believe that for a second. especially considering these students spent the past 10 years using his quirk to purposely harm Izuku. He wasn't ready to forgive Katsuki, and the blonde had yet to formally apologize. He would hold it over Katsuki's head for the rest of his life if it would help him make a point. We're ready, Sensei. Hoi. I don't know French. Hoi. Q? Yoi? No. Okay. Yoi, Oyama insisted. We can do this. We can do it. Kirishima, Mina, Kaminari, and even Shoji all spoke up in agreement, but Shota was paying more attention to the students who didn't speak up about their preparedness. When their teacher's eyes settled on Izuku, the teen hardened his face. Let him fail, is what he mouthed to Shota. He knew Shota could read lips. Of course he could. He was the best underground hero in the country, in Izuku's humble opinion. Lip reading was a skill Izuku had picked up as a survival skill. It had prevented him from getting caught in his bullies' traps several times after seeing them talk about their plans. It was useful, and Shota knew that too. The hero sighed. Fine, but I'm getting Recovery Girl to deck you for any dumb hellspawn. To check deck on you? Fine, I'm getting Recovery Girl to deck for your dumb hellspawn. He turned to All Might. If any of my students get seriously injured, I'll have your hero license. Do you understand? Please, Aizawa, these kids will be just fine. They're hero students. They have to be ready for anything. Take a breath. Maybe drink some coffee. Both Izuku and Hitoshi sat back in tandem when they caught a flash of Shota's quirk after All Might's words. Oh, he was a dead man. Or he would be soon. For the moment, the teacher did nothing more than wave a hand to dismiss the conversation and headed towards the viewing platform. Alright, students, pair up. We'll be doing mock battles between heroes and villains. There will be 2 heroes and 2 villains on each team. I'll pick which you play. Now, let's see. The class was quick to pair up, but no one came to Izuku and Hitoshi. They were already glued to the hip, and Hitoshi was more comfortable leaning on Izuku's head, so they weren't about to move. He waited for everyone to pair up before going around to the groups, and assign an alternating hero and villain to each team. At the end, when he got to Izuku and Hitoshi, the number 1 hero stopped. Looks like a one shot, Hitoshi Shinso-kun. You'll have to be put in as a 3rd. Excuse me, I have a partner. Izuku was silent. Well, you can't be paired with the class observer now, can you? Come along, I'll put you a Bakugo on Kirishima. All Might Sensei? Momo raised her hand. Izuku is our classmate, not an observer. Impossible. Yurei doesn't have any students like him, and besides, he's quirkless. He'll only end up injured while the rest of you play hero. It's not fair to the rest of you. What did you just say? Katsuki's quirk and his jaw cracked at the same time. I know the number 1 hero did not just vomit quirkless bullshit in front of impressionable students. Because if he did, I'm gonna fucking take my quirk to the fucking face. He's going to take my fucking... Well, thanks. Because if he did, he is going to take my quirk to the fucking face. Again, Izuku was silent. Sometimes, silence was more powerful than arguing or fighting. Sometimes being silent would keep a person out of trouble. Silence would protect him. Not speaking up, not fighting back, would protect him. That's enough, Bakugo. If you want to let out your anger, you have a perfectly good outlet right here. All Might motioned to Izuku. Point fucking blank. Something about it inside Izuku just cracked, shattered. Perhaps it exploded instead. Maybe Mary put a bomb inside Izuku's chest to see how long it would take him to set it off. It was an experiment. Oh, what an experiment that would be. He could hear Schroeder's shoes slapping on the concrete behind the group, running towards them. The rest of the class was staring at All Might in shock. The number one hero busied himself looking over the class roster to make a few adjustments to his lesson plan for heroes and villains since they were one short. Izuku shrugged Hitoshi's arms off. His boyfriend finally grabbed his wrist, squeezing the metal bands around it. "Don't," his boyfriend begged. "Let go," Izuku growled. Hitoshi backed off. Izuku could see the fresh tears in Katsuki's eyes as he shouldered past the blonde. He was too shell-shocked to move when Izuku pushed through the class towards the so-called hero in front of him. "All Might? What is it, boy?" He didn't look up. Izuku slapped the clipboard out of his hands. "How dare you? Listen to me. I will say this once, and like my teacher, I hate repeating myself." Izuku knew the look on his face was dead, cold, and his voice was cruel and unemotional. You are the worst type of human scum to inhabit this earth. You are poison, foxglove with thorns. You are vile, detestable, and unredeemable," Izuku scoffed. "You think only those with power can be a hero and change the world? You think the only true hero is the one with the strongest quirk? How dare you speak to me like this?" "Shut up," Izuku barked. "I'm speaking. It's rude to interrupt." All Might was glaring at him. Schroeder had arrived by his side, but it didn't interfere yet, because this was all just words so far. Still, Izuku knew he would get in trouble for this later. Right now, he had to let all the words that had been choked in his throat after the sludge villain assaulted him and All Might rescued him. "You are the reason people like me are dying, killing themselves. You are at fault for a 6-year-old girl swallowing a bottle of pills after her mother told her she should have never been born. You are I don't know that word. You are full of hate and you are the reason of hate and vitriol against people born more human than you. You know you're right. Quirkless people are different. We're not monsters like you. We don't judge people based by their power or lack thereof. We don't hate them for being born different. We don't beat people after death for loving someone different." He watched Hitoshi cover his mouth in the corner of his vision. Turning halfway in either shame or horror, it was hard to tell. Of course, Hitoshi would never be ashamed of Izuku. No, he was horrified that Izuku had all this to say. That it was happening at all. He had endured some horrible things simply because people would never accept Izuku like Hitoshi did. "You're a villain," Izuku gasped, half choked by a sob buried in his chest. "You were my hero when I was a little kid. I thought that, of course, the number one hero would support my childhood dreams." His face fell again. "Instead, you forced me you told me to find a more realistic dream. You are a villain. You are a villain in my story, like so many others." "Izuku." Schroeder put a hand on his shoulder, a warning. "That's enough." But it wasn't. It wasn't enough. Not until he made a point. If my body ever hits the concrete, know that it will be your name, All Might, Yagi Toshinori, on my suicide note." Schroeder physically recoiled, several students gasping. Katsuki's explosions were flickering and cracking between his fists. Hitoshi was practically screaming into his capture scarf. All Might was speechless, dumb, starstruck, struck dumb, and maybe that was the only feasible reaction to what Izuku had just said. Maybe that was the only appropriate response. Izuku did not want to be dismissed. Izuku didn't wait to be dismissed. He went to the locker rooms on his own, leaving his class and boyfriend and his teachers back to marinate at his words. He went too far. Izuku most certainly went too far. He collapsed on the first bench he could find in the locker room and put his head in his hands between his knees. His stomach twisted in knots. His mouth watered profusely. A moment later, he stumbled to one of the bathroom stalls and emptied his lunch into the toilet. He had just stood up to the number one hero in the country and called him a fucking villain. Oh fuck. But his body betrayed him, forcing his head into the toilet for a second round of whatever bile remained in his gut. He collapsed into the stall, sitting sideways so he could put his back on one wall and his feet on the other. He hadn't even had the chance to close the door, but he could hardly care if someone watched him puking his guts out. It didn't matter. The locker room doors clattered open, followed by the sound of stomping boots. Hitoshi rounded the corner with pain in his eyes, tears streaming down his face. If you ever, he gasped, if you ever talk about killing yourself again, I swear to God, I'll... Izuku pulled Hitoshi down by grabbing his shirt. Hitoshi wrapped himself around Izuku, hugging Izuku's head into his chest. He was scared. He was scared that if he let Izuku go, he'd vanish. Izuku shared that fear so terribly. He clutched the back of his boyfriend's suit and finally let himself break for the first time since the whole mess started with when Osamu was attacked. He screamed into Hitoshi's shoulder, all his fears, all his anger and sadness. He curled himself into the smallest ball he could and became nothing more than a lump of pain trying to exorcise its own demons. Hitoshi held him through it, not making a single sound. Izuku heard the door open once but shut a second later, leaving them in an empty locker room and the echoing cries of Izuku's soul cracking open against Hitoshi's shoulders. It must have been at least an hour before anyone disturbed them. Izuku was not surprised when Shota wandered slowly through the locker room and sat himself on a bench nearby. Hitoshi had only just got Izuku to calm down, but both of them were a mess of tears and snot. Shota did not seem to mind or even notice. Nezu was handling the blonde bastard. Izuku appreciated that he didn't use the hero's name. I can't be promised that he'll be removed, but he'll be severely reprimanded and he won't be leading any classes. Shota sighed. Don't tell... You told him to let him fail, and he did, spectacularly. Hitoshi combed Izuku's curls from his face and tried to smile softly. Izuku offered a small smile back. Shota went on. Kirishima and Ida had told Bakugo back from ripping him apart. I think he might have succeeded too. Ochako and Mino were ready to rip his balls off and say as much. Izuku snorted while Hitoshi bit his lip. Shota cackled with a grin when he got a rise out of them. You're not in trouble, by the way. He was being a Quirkless bastard. He deserves what you said, and more. But I think, I can't let that last comment slide. Yeah, Izuku rasped out. I know. Hound Dog will see you tomorrow after class. I know you didn't mean it with intent, but I can't let something like that go. I would be a poor teacher, a poor guardian if I did. It's okay, Shota. Izuku lifted his head up to smile at his teacher. You're a good hero, a good teacher. I'm sorry I lost my shit on him. When he told Kachan to, Izuku swallowed hard. I just snapped. I know, you may be a student now, but when you're a pro, you can't snap like that on anyone. Izuku nodded. He finally pulled himself out of Hitoshi's arms and leaned on back on the bathroom stall to think over Shota's words. I'll think about it. That's all I ask. As he stood, Shota flicked Hitoshi's long hair. Come on, you two need to get some food and rest. Yes, Dad, Hitoshi grumbled. Shredder rolled his eyes and Izuku chuckled. World domination wasn't tabled yet, but for now, they would focus on getting past their first year of high school. If Izuku knew once he was out in the world, he couldn't lose his shit like he did today. He would have to put up with the shit like he did as a kid. By taking the fists right to his face, he could do that. But he wasn't going to change the world if he didn't have to. But he was going to change the world so he wouldn't have to take those punches. So no one else would have to take punches after him. Okay, that was chapter 11 of It's Not Love If You Run When It's Hard by Lita Cakes. Well, that was certainly something. If you're here after the sex scene, hello. I'm going to be using this outro for both videos because I'm going to make a separate video for the sex scene because, oh my god, I could barely hold myself together. I was cringing so hard. I'm not sure people even use cringe anymore, the word cringe, but if it is, I was so cringing so hard. Anyway, I'm going to block that bit out and put in a separate video and put it for adults only. Because I know there's a lot of young, impressionable people in my channel, and I do not want to traumatize anyone. So yeah. Anyway, hope you had a good time, and I'll see you guys later. Bye.